Hello and welcome to this special series of episodes called 29 Days of Magic. During Black History Month, the month of February, I'll be interviewing a Black woman a day who's from business and entrepreneurship. You name it, I'm going to have a chat with her. The idea for this is to show off the amazingness of Black women throughout various industries. I hope you take a listen, like, share, review, and be inspired by these incredible stories. Take a listen. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the cultural communications agency, D-Flash. Each episode, I bring on a different business leader who's doing some game-changing work. And I'm so excited to have Adria Kitchens, who's the director of Equity Activism at Out of Hand Theater. Have a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Adria, how are you?
I am wonderful, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So the way this podcast works is really simple. Questions are very straightforward. And the first one's always the same. So, Adria, what was your first job?
My first job, oh goodness, was at Barnes & Noble bookstore, which no longer exists, right? I was a big... It
still exists some places.
Some places. Oh, maybe it does. Maybe it does. So I was 15, which is younger than you're supposed to actually start working. I think somehow I knew the manager and I loved to read. And my mom, it's like, all these relationships, right? My mom was able to get me an interview there because someone in my church actually was the assistant manager there. And I started at Barnes & Noble bookstore when I was 15. It was one of my favorite jobs because I loved reading and I would just pour through books. It didn't matter what the genre was. I mean, I had my favorites, but whatever books were available, I would read those. And it was one of the favorite things. I think I did that throughout college, that I was able to follow, stay in that same company throughout my, at least the first 2 years of college, because I worked there for 4 years in high school.
Oh, wow. I'm sure you learned a ton. Because customer service, great books.
Oh, yeah.
All kinds of crazy people with insane demands.
Especially in the bookstore.
As someone who used to live in the Barnes & Noble where I grew up on Long Island, yes, I can speak to this. And I think it's really important that we all love our bookstores, especially now, because in our smaller independent ones who need more help than ever. So I totally get it.
Yes, I still love books. I mean, I listen to audiobooks and I still like to buy the actual book.
Yeah, same. Have it in my hand is something. I mean, even though if I'm doing the audiobook, having it in my hand means a lot.
Exactly.
So we go from perusing the aisles of Barnes & Noble to now. What's that career journey been like?
Oh my goodness. So it definitely has not been like a linear journey to where I am now. There are so many stops along the path. I mean, from, when I was in college, I was very focused on being a doctor and ended up going into research. My best friend wanted to go into research and I wanted to be the doctor, and she ended up being the MD, and I ended up going into research and worked at Emory for several years. And then once I started, having a family, I wanted to be at home with my children. And I looked at a way that I could do that. I was married at the time. I'm divorced now. But I wanted to figure out how I could be at home with my children more because, they were delightful to me, these little humans that we bring into the world. And yes. Little humans, and I looked for a way that I could work for myself. I think I had always had that in my beingness. I didn't really know how to do it because not anyone in my family, at least, my immediate family, they were not entrepreneurs. My dad was a teacher. My mother was a teacher. So I really didn't see them doing that, but I looked for a way that I could start to work for myself. And so, that was kind of a journey, right? Because I had to figure out the things that I could take from coming out of academia and being a researcher, and what could I take into into the world and offer to people. And I remember I started off, when I left Emory, being an organizer, because I was really good. I was a really detailed person, of course, numbers person coming out of research. We were always focused on data. And I went into like organizing and helping people in their home offices. And as I started to grow in that way, I think that put me on this journey it kind of puts you on this journey of self-discovery, right? To really figure out who you are in the world. And I didn't really know, right? I was still very young, probably in my 30s. I'm much older now, or in my 20s at the time. I'll put it in my 20s at the time. It kind of put me on this path of self-discovery of who is Adria and what is she in the world. And I really could never connect with it. In all honesty, I wasn't connecting with it well. Ended up going through divorce through those years. So what really put me on the path to where I am now was probably coming fully facing my own self, right? I had some things happen in my childhood, which not the fault of my parents, which for me have been traumatic. And I came like full force, emotionally to that, lost everything in a financial crisis. Like all of this happened at the same time.
That's what always happens. Always.
Right? And that's what put me on that, like really on the path of where I am now. And the way I started to find myself was through this work called Feminine Power, that was created by a woman who's out in California. Her name is Claire Zam, and she's a PhD now. And it was like inside of that work, I really started to be able to name and see myself and connect with myself and really find out who Adria is. And that for me was so activating. And it wasn't like an immediate thing. Like it was this journey of different ways of, going back to school, getting, master's degrees, and being certified as a coach and facilitator in the work that I was learning, because it was so transformational for me, that I was like, I have to be able to do this for other women, because it was specifically focused on women and the experience of women in the world. And so it was like in that whole span of all of those years, brought me where I am now. And that work probably for me was the pivotal work that really, that and having children was the pivotal work for me to really show up in the world as I am now, because it really just it started to activate my voice in the world, who Adria is, and having children and having brown children. I have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. That opened my eyes in many ways to, oh my God, how am I going to keep them safe in this world where they are brown children, in the world. And so that probably was a beginning point. I mean, there's some other points along the way that really honed my voice into, race equity and anti-racism, and a lot of that has been the experiences with my children, and really wanting to create a place in a world, not just for my children, but for all people's children, right? To be able to live their fullest lives, to thrive, to be joy-filled.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's one also so impactful. Thank you for sharing. Because, as the daughter of, Black mom and dad, but and the sister of 2 older Black brothers, it's worrisome in these streets. And so how do you sort of define feminine power and kind of the work that you do today in terms of helping women find their voices with this?
Oh, I love that question, because, really most of the time when I say feminine power, people just start thinking women, like, women are empowered. And, it's so funny. how I really define it, excuse me. It really is where you source your power, right? So we live in a very hyper masculinized system, right? So there's a masculine kind of way we've always seen power, right? Which is, in many ways power over, right? That's the way I always knew power to be. That, somebody had power over me, whether it was my parents, if I was in church, it was God had power over me going to heaven or hell, like it was so black and white and so binary. And so when I was able to really step into what feminine power really means, right, like power with, right, like community and connection, and that power can be expansive and creative. And it can be a connection with myself, with God, life, universe, with other people. That for me became like really the foundation of everything else that I do. And it really helped me step into, I can actually support and create a system that is more equitable, and my children can actually have a safe place to live. Because now I have power to be able to do that. I actually know how to source that power from within myself, as opposed to, in a masculine system where it always seems you have to source power outside of yourself. And so it can be very limiting, because I felt very powerless inside of that system. And you can tell me, I have like a little short story to tell about my son, if we have time. And if we have time, I can do that, which is kind of really how feminine power and my work in activism really came together. A few years ago, my son is now, he's 19 now, beautiful, 6'2", almost like, 300 or something pounds. He's a big guy. But several years ago, when he was much younger, he was actually accused of a crime here, where I live locally, in Atlanta. And, I was horrified. I was devastated. His father, he and I were divorced at that time. And we actually spent about 10 months in juvenile court, inside of trying to, support my son and dealing with what he was accused of. And I just remember being in that court over that 10 months, just to start there, where I realized that everybody I saw in court was Black or brown, unless I was in traffic court, where you saw different hues of people. And in the process, he was, accused of this crime by two young women. And we actually proved that he didn't do it. And in fact, the complainants admitted to lying on the stand, like on the stand. And the judge still refused to dismiss the case. And
what?
Right.
Because this is Georgia. That's
right. This is Georgia. So 3 more months, we're still in court. And she finally dismisses the case. And really, in all honesty, it was because I had the privilege, right, of knowing this amazing attorney who could defend my son. And it was really only because he, basically said, he just kind of embarrassed her, said, why are we still here? The complainants, you no longer have a case. And if I was in adult court, we wouldn't still be here. So she dismisses the case, and she holds us back so she can tell my son that she really wanted to put him in jail today because she didn't like the way his hair was cut. And I just remember sitting there, Black judge, Black prosecutor. And I think, up until that time, it's not that I didn't know racism existed. It was then when I was like, this is what systemic racism is. Like when people can look at a Black child and just say Black, and I'm going to put them in jail. Right. And I'm looking at all of these kids that I saw every time I was in there, thinking, oh my God, what if, we just had the privilege of his, my ex-husband and I coming together to pay for an attorney, everybody in our family, including his stepmother, showing up every time we were in court. And in fact, having that used against us to say we were trying to intimidate people, as opposed to it meaning that we're trying to support our child who is innocent. And I don't think it had been in my face that much, until that point. And so it was like in that point that I made the commitment that I have to do something for all these other children who might not have the access that my children have. And I did not know what that was at that point. And so that for me is when like my feminine power like started to like come face to face with what is it that I can do in the world. And I was able to, through my kind of through this idea of the feminine, right, where you expand and start to attract in people of like mind, came into contact with my first mentor, really kind of in race equity, who's Dr. Deidre Hawkins, who is local here to Atlanta as well, and really become a part of her work, and really, looking at race equity from a strengths-based approach, which really helped me because I felt overwhelmed and hopeless. And her work was able to actually support me in seeing that we could make a shift and a change in shifting systems, because it was very much inside of a feminine paradigm, like feminine power. And so all of that has really brought me to this place of being able to, do this work in equity, and really say, what does it mean to, what we're looking at now, like, what does it really mean to create a culture of anti-racism? What would it mean, for me personally, because I love working with Black women, what does it mean for us to like turn this whole idea of the strong Black woman, like shift that entire archetype from a masculine perspective to a feminine, inside the feminine? And what does that really mean for us to be at rest? Like to really stand in who we are, and not allow that to be a burden, but to be a platform and a foundation for who we are in the world. And so that like that, and I think that one defining space as a mother, having to like pull out the mother bear and like go for it was probably the most pivotal thing for me, and being able to access not only my feminine, but really be able to step into a voice around equity and anti-racism.
Wow. And so, one, I'm so sorry that happened to your son and to your family. And glad he was able to get away from these idiots, and break away from this idiotic system. But also it just shows to shine a light that like, but for circumstances, this can be any kid.
Yes. Yes.
On so many levels. And then that changes the course of their life forever.
That's exactly. And yes, that's exactly what I saw. I was like, my son could be going to prison, right? He could be labeled for the rest of his life. And so many kids,
and that'll be it. And that'll be it. Because he's not white. Because if it's a white boy, like, oh, well, useful distraction. But like, here's a hedge fund. I mean, I always remember the story of a girl I used to work with, and came from a very wealthy family. And when they're kind of rich but oblivious that they're rich. And but she's always very sweet and nice. Like, not to discount that she wasn't a nice person. She said to me that like her brother had gotten arrested and gotten a DUI, and his and he was in his 20s, so he finished college, and he was like the screw up of the family, and so they decided to ship him off to California. So I figured, and so she's like, when she says it, like, I figured, you're gonna send him off to California to try and figure stuff out, and and learn. And she's like, no, my dad shipped him up to California because there's a hedge fund VC in tech that he can get a job at. And I remember then reading about how like this fund that he was working for, because he was not on the website, had like raised like, I don't know, $100 million for this fund. And like this kid was working there. And I'm like,
wow.
So you were arrested, you got a DUI, and because your dad was friends with some other dad, he hooked you up with a job paying you six figures in an industry you know nothing about, because you know nothing about tech. But put him on a path to continue to be rich forever.
Yes. Oh my
that
God.
doesn't happen to us. That doesn't happen to us.
No. I was horrified at the number of kids I saw And I mean, literally, not one of the children I saw in 10 months was anything but Black and brown. I was just, I'm like floored. And how does that happen? I don't know how you get those jobs like that. That's
It's
amazing
systemic.
that you can actually do something wrong that you need, that should be consequences for, and you can actually just keep moving on.
Well, it's interesting. It's why currently, what's happening in our politics now, where folks are complaining
Yeah.
about about cancel culture, when it's consequence culture. And the
Yes.
reason you're so mad because it's the first time you've ever had to deal with consequences.
Yes, ever. They have, in many, let me not use the word they, many people have lived in a, in our society and culture where their behavior is not checked at all. Right. And so in many ways, we are constantly, Black people and especially Black children are overwatched, over policed, constantly looking for things that they are doing wrong. And as long as that's what you're looking for, that is what you're going to see, right? Whatever we're looking for just starts to expand.
If you look for trouble, you'll find it. That's what you're looking for.
Yes. Anyway, especially if you're watching and you're not watching another group, right? Who might or may not be doing something, yet you will not see it because you're not looking.
Well, you're not looking, and that's why they grow. And then you're shocked when they storm the Capitol.
Yes, there you go. Thank you so much, Laura. That's it. You're shocked at their behavior after you've allowed their behavior to go unchecked.
It's like, remember that time that you let it off from the DUI.
Yes.
You paid off the girl so she would recant her story.
Yes.
You, of course, said, you need guns? Here, I'll go buy them for you. How many of those guys went with their mom to the insurrection?
Yeah.
Yes. And so you knew the behavior your kids were exhibiting for a very long time. And you're like, consequences.
Yes, kids, adult. I mean, in so many ways, and so that's, when you look at it, you're almost in awe sometimes. When you look at that and you say, what is actually like, am I in an alternate universe? And then you just recognize that in many ways, that is an alternate universe, right?
Yeah.
That's a complete alternate universe that someone's living inside of, that they don't know. They wouldn't know a life that's like mine. They don't know a life that's like my son's or my father's or my brother. Like that, even that for me was eye-opening, because I said, is this what my brother and my father have been experiencing? Like getting stopped by the police, my brother working in tech, as an engineer and being discriminated against, and, not getting the job, not getting the promotion or not getting the raise. And I was like, wow, even I, as a Black woman, was not aware, as aware as I think I should have been, of the experience of even my own the Black men, even in my own family.
It's a very strange time when all this has become a reckoning.
Yes.
And I was saying to someone earlier when previously recording that, the gift and the curse of us being all at home is that we all get to see both sides of this. Mm-hmm. The white people who have I don't really know what you mean by white privilege. Okay, so you watched these past summer and saw George Floyd and saw Chris Cooper and saw Breonna Taylor, and then you saw January 6th. Mm-hmm. So now you kind of know what the deal is. You can't hide. And the flip side is Black people going, oh God, I have to watch Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Chris Cooper and now see January 6th. So that is unfortunately the weird alternate universe that we all are living in right now. Because for some people, we had to rip the scales off their eyes, and for us, it's like Clockwork Orange, where you're forcing my eyes to stay open, even though I don't want to see this anymore because I already live it.
Right, because I live it every day, and it's so painful. Mm-hmm.
So for you, what's sort of now your everyday, like in helping people kind of understand, like, this is bad and really terrible?
So my everyday. So I really believe I was blessed to have been able to work with someone who looked at this from a strengths based, because I think otherwise I would walk around angry or or even worse than I think feeling like I had no power to change anything. And so coming to this conversation every day from a place of there is hope, right? That my reality is this, right? Reality me, there are people who are completely unaware. There are people who don't believe racism exists. I do recognize those people are there. I also recognize that there are a lot of people who are not just Black people, but there are a lot of white people. There are people around the world, people of all hues, ethnicities, races who are saying, hey, this is a problem. We must change this. And so like my reality every day is kind of inside of that lens. And so I get to do that in my work at Out of Hand Theater through our equitable dinners. So we bring people together in a virtual space where we talk about race and racism, and really wanting to inspire people to anti-racism action every month. And that grew out of a live event, right, that we started. And of course, we can't do that now, where in 2019, we brought over 1,200 people together, all on one night to talk about race and racism here in the city of Decatur. And we did that with using the work or some of the foundational work of Dr. Deidre Hawkins. So we use our model, our virtual model is built off of the work that she started in her dissertation in Chicago. And so now we get to do that every month, and we bring people together. We also launched our Institute for Equity Activism last year, where we're able to give people the tools, right? What are the tools you need to actually go out and create the things in the community that you want to create, and do that from an approach that allows you to collaborate with others, to use the arts to really ground conversations, to give people a lens of anti-racism, of transformation. So it allows me, like every day now, I get to bring my feminine power work that I started with Claire Zammit into the conversation, because what I recognize is that our identities are tied into this social construct, of race, right? And what we are asking people to do is to shift something that is core to their entire being on the planet. And if you're asking someone to do that, you can't just go out and say, hey, I just want to remind you that that's racist, right? That your behavior is racist, that this exists, that we actually have to give people the tools to help them transform their own identities, and to transform what I see now, is to transform the culture into a culture of anti-racism. And that really has come out of, our work with the Equitable Dinners design team, which is an amazing group of leaders. And as we've been working together over the last several months, that has become kind of our mantra and lens, is how do we really support people to start to take action to dismantle these systems, and now really look at how do they take on anti-racism, so that it becomes, so that we get out of this idea of thinking that this is not a lifestyle. We're asking you to shift your entire identity towards anti-racism, which would change our focus, right, on race and who we are, right, as white people and Black people. We would all be looking at the world, as Dr. Kamara Jones likes to say, who's on our team, how is racism operating here? And if we can look at and start asking that question, then we can start to dismantle what's happening. And so, all of that for me is a process of how the feminine works, of how you work in transformational spaces, and how you actually transform these things that look like overwhelming a little bit at a time, right? Because we're helping people not just individually, but collectively, to shift our identity towards something that will move us all forward as humans.
And so important. So having done all these dinners, what's been one of the most surprising things you've seen come out of one?
Ooh, the most surprising. I think the level of connection between people has been really the hallmark of what when we think about racism being this, this way of separating people, and that if we can connect people and not just connect like walking by, hey, how you doing? Just really have a meaningful connection, so meaningful that they want to continue to connect when they leave that space. Like that's been for me probably one of the most amazing things that comes out. That people come out of here really wanting to stay connected, to know each other, to say, hey, I really want to know this person, right? Because we're all virtual inside COVID. I really want to know this person like in person, like in person. I want to get to know them better. And that's where the walls break down of separateness, where we get to see each other in our own humanity. So for me, it would be that. I mean, there are lots of other, beautiful things that happen, especially with the art and especially in the events. And I think, but that is the one thing that we're really trying to do is just to connect each other. And for me, like personally, is to really share with people that conversation is revolutionary. It is an action. Like we think we are actually connecting with people every day, but most of the time we're not actually truly connecting because we're not listening. We're not hearing what they're saying. We're always trying to form a reply or convince them that they are wrong and we are right. And if we could recognize that actually having a true conversation where I'm listening to the other person, hearing what they have to say, regardless of whether I agree or disagree, allowing them to show up where they are, that is the revolution, right? Because when people are truly heard, truly seen, they do their own self-reflection. And if you can create that space, and then they can take the information about racism, about systemic racism, about white privilege, they can take that and start to question like, oh, there is something wrong here. They might be right. And they want to, and then they want to join you, right? You've given them the skills and you've empowered them with this, at least the beginning skills they need to start to join you on this journey, as opposed to trying to stop you on the journey. And that's what I want to do. I want to create a space where people really are inspired to join us on the journey.
So very important. I think people forget the importance of listening. I mean, it was like fortuitous back in June, or like early July. I had Dr. Portia Hunt on the podcast, and she just talked about the power of actually listening. Because the thing that hasn't happened, and it's kind of because of our current circumstances of being stuck home, that you couldn't turn away from what you were seeing on TV. That those videos were being played over and over and over again. And so you had to hear it. You had to hear the screams. You had to hear the 911 calls. And actually listening kind of started to cut through the concrete, which was blocking people from actually understanding that this is just our basic humanity that we're trying to get. I'm not asking you for $5. I just want you to treat me as a human being.
Yes.
And it was like with Cicely Tyson recently when she, before she passed away, and they showed an interview where she said that like the white critic was like, why did the boy in your film call his dad daddy? And he's like, because that's his son. And she's like, oh, wait a minute. You didn't actually view us as human. And so that's the first problem here. And I think that encapsulates what is happening right this moment. It's like, we're just asking for basic humanity here, not asking you for money. I just want you to see me and see another person who's human, who has feelings, and like can get hurt, who bleeds, who cries, who laughs. And there's a portion of the population who just doesn't want to see that.
Right. Mm-hmm. So well said, Laura.
Oh, no, that's right.
So well said. Yes.
And so, as a result of the dinners, are you seeing folks like now that they've learned something and had an opportunity to be open with strangers, that they've taken that and gone back and done some good?
Yes. So one of the things that we looked at, even in Decatur, um, when we had those dinners, there've been so many changes just in that city from doing that. They saw like record numbers of people, coming out for that kind of led into a strategic planning process that they were doing. It happened all around the same time. They saw changes in the demographic makeup of their board of commissioners, board of education, and by that I mean Black people.
Actual Black
Because
people.
they had been having
Actual Black people.
lots of issues, and we were there because they had been having issues in their school system and around a number of Black children, who were being suspended, compared to the white children. And it's, and not that it's, everything's all perfect. They're, but what I see is a group of people who are willing to work, right? Like they're like putting the work in. People are naming, racism is operating here. Like these are things that are happening. And so just to see those changes, there are many people we had lots of community members who were supporting us when we were designing that dinner. They have really named that as community members, they've seen differences in their own community, to see those changes on the board, to see the people who were able to run for office, who were activated kind of in the process of being in the dinner, really inspired, to run for office. Even if they had been thinking about it beforehand, they really were activated kind of inside the process of being able to connect with other people, talk about race and racism, and really see that they could make a difference, right? It's really because we have to give people the hope that they can make a difference. Otherwise, we don't do anything. If we feel hopeless, what's the point? If
why did I bother doing this?
Why do anything? And so if we can activate people to do that, and so I think that's what we've seen. So, what we are looking at now is how we measure inspiration. So, because that's our vision. The vision for Equitable Dinners is that we inspire anti-racism action through art and courageous conversation. And so we worked with this amazing team of evaluators to look at how we are measuring people's level of inspiration that you can measure. And we want people to be inspired to take an action, to go out and change their community, even if it's just calling a commissioner, calling the legislator, voting, whatever that is. Reading a book, starting your own book club, whatever that is, we want you to be inspired to move forward. And we have seen that. We've had people come forward and volunteer. We have so many people who want to, because we have facilitated small breakout groups, people who come forward and want to facilitate at our dinners because they're so inspired by what they're seeing. They join our Institute for Equity Activism because they're like, oh, I can do something. And they create these, they recognize they can create projects even, in their community and make a change and make a difference. So we've definitely seen action come out of those connections at our dinners.
Awesome. And since you're in Georgia, clearly it's worked because it's now a blue state. So thanks. So,
well, I didn't do that. All the props out to Stacey Abrams and her team and all the people. We had someone on our design team who actually had to take a step back for a little bit because she did so much work getting on the phone and calling voters. So just some amazing work that was done here in Georgia by Black women and, all people, white people too, but definitely Black women were at the center of that.
Well, if you're a Black woman in Georgia, you help because I know you. Right? I know you voted, so we're counting that. And
Great.
you never know, like, who may have come to one of your dinners and was like, you know what? I was going to stay my behind home, and now I want to vote. So
Yes.
take the credit.
I love it. Thank you.
We're so excited to have Soho Works as the sponsor for the 29 Days of Magic campaign. You know, they're designed by Soho House, and their workspaces to help creative thinkers, businesses small and large, connect, collaborate, and grow. And it's where I'm recording all the episodes of 29 Days of Magic. It's a safe, wonderful, and collaborative experience. I'm currently in the Brooklyn location, but they have locations, one else in New York City, in the Meatpacking District, one in LA, 5 in the UK, and they give you that kind of home away from home feeling with all the tools, technology, equipment to help you do your best work. Like I said, it's an amazing location, feels safe. I've been able to meet some really awesome people, which you haven't been able to do a lot because of the fact of COVID. So it's been a wonderful experience being able to record here and help build community. So if you want to find out more information about it, please go to sohoworks.com to get more information and tell them I sent you. And now back to the show. Looking back on everything you've done now, what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Adria?
What would I tell 25-year-old Adria? Oh, wow, that's such a good question. What would I tell 25-year-old Adria? That that is okay to be you, like that you are perfect and fine and just enough, just as you are, that I accept you with all of your quirks and with all of the ways you look at yourself that you think you're failing. I would tell her that I accept all of those pieces of her, like all the parts of her are important and vital to this world, and that you actually do have something to contribute. Like, even if you can't name it at this point in your life, you have something to contribute to the world.
Awesome. Great. So obviously you're busy changing the world on a daily basis. What are you doing for your self-care?
That's a good question. So one of the things that I've been looking at, especially as I've been exploring this work with Black women, is what self-care really is. And for me, what I recognize through Feminine Power is that true self-care is a relationship with myself, is being deeply connected with myself. Like I used to think it was like these external things, go to the spa, get a massage, or even rest, sometimes it could be sleep. That can be some of it. That's part of it. And what I've recognized for me is that my self-care is constantly being deeply connected to Adria and making sure that Adria knows that she is okay, that she is fully accepted, that she is fully loved, that she is connected to a God, a force, a being in this universe that is bigger than she is, that she has the power to connect with other people, other women, and create things in the world. And like through those connections, she comes to life in the world. Like I am not here by myself. And so for me, like self-care is that. So self-care is this constant just connecting back in, closing my eyes in the moment where these feelings of fear come up. When I'm about to take a step or share an idea or share something with the group and I feel like, oh, they might reject me. It's like stepping in with that and say, you know what? It's okay. You're fully accepted by me. So even if they reject your idea, I accept it. And in that moment, I'm able to step fully into myself and allow myself to take risks that I wouldn't normally take. And that's really how all the things that I have been able to so fortunately create, especially in this past year, have happened because of that level of self-care for myself. Like that for me is self-care. And like, that's what I'm working on and, studying in my, in my work, it's, it's called a true Black feminine, like really defining that for us as Black women. That's my self-care.
Awesome. And a great one. And then last question for you. Do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
A give or an ask for the audience. So what I would give is, would this be a time to invite people to a podcast? A give?
Sure.
I have that to give. So what I would give is an invite to people coming into conversation with us through equitable dinners, as well as a podcast. My podcast, The True Black Feminine. It's actually True Black Feminine, 13 Revolutionary Acts to Living Our Black Feminine Destiny. And then what I would ask is for people to, I would ask people to listen more, talk less, to assume good intent even when we don't want to, to truly meet people where they are and not where we want them to be.
I love that.
Yeah, that would be my 3 asks.
That's awesome and wonderful. Oh my gosh, Adria, you're so wonderful. I'm so glad I got to talk to you.
I'm glad I got to talk to you. You're amazing. Your energy is amazing.
Thank you. So we'll put details about the equity dinners in our show notes so folks can check them out and hopefully sign up for one, as well as listening to your podcast, and also taking your gives out into the world. So listen and meet people where they are, not where you hope them to be. Is some fantastic advice. So, Adria, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. This has just been a joy. It really, really has.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And with that, that is our show.